introduction speech here. So, hi everybody. So, as you heard and as you will hear from my accent, I just flew in from France in between a business trip to Italy and to China to actually tell you all about busyness and even better on how to overcome it. And actually, when I chose that topic about busyness, it was in the middle of my summer. I was on vacation. I thought I had mastered busyness. And then the last few weeks, it was so busy that I said, wow, who am I to stand on the stage to speak about busyness epidemic? So I'll first start after the break to have you participating to that speech and to actually do a very high-tech poll, and I hope the pronunciation is right, which would be about raising your hand if when asked if you are doing well, you respond often, well and busy, right? Raise your hand if you are in that category. Raise your hand if you rush through your days and to your to-do list and you still think you have not achieved what you wanted. Raise your hands. Okay, so that is just a scientific proof, I'm a scientist, right? That even in Lancaster County, the business epidemic has hit. And I really believe it's one of the biggest epidemic of the 21st century. And if you are like me, you probably read books and you tried tools to actually organize your busyness, right? But I think that actually barely treats the symptoms of busyness. And I really think that if we want to prevent, right, I'm in the business of vaccines, if you want to prevent busyness, it's really about focusing on what really matters, actually. And when I say focusing on really matters, coming back to the Ferrari example, it's not about the next biggest car. It's not about the next promotion. It's not about external recognition, but it's really to focus on what impact you want to have during your days and what legacy actually you want to show and to leave behind. So when I turned 40 years ago, I discovered that what matters actually comes from within. And that's the story I want to tell you here. Centuries ago, Confucius already actually found out that when in a hurry, slow down. And so we are going to do a little experiment together, pretty similar to what Curtis had done. We had not spoken that up, about you closing your eyes, not to fall asleep after the break if you want, okay? But really closing your eyes and concentrating on your breath. So let's do that experiment. And let's really experiment together that what really matters comes from within. Close your eyes and take an inhale. Hold your breath and exhale. Continue that cycle to inhale, hold your breath, and exhale. As you continue that cycle, feel your legs relax. Feel your arms relax. Feel your shoulders and relax. Feel your face and relax. How do you feel by now? And think as you continue that breathing cycle, think about a moment that made you really happy, where you really felt joy in your life. Think about that moment. Think about the image, think about a feeling, an emotion you had at that moment. And take that last breath, and I invite you to reopen your eyes. So there is a chance that what you saw, you felt, is actually something that really mattered to you from the within. And so if you're okay, maybe some of you can share just that one word about what you felt, what you saw, whether it was family, sport, whatever. Who wants to say a few, just one word throughout on what you felt about that happy moment?
My children?
Your children?
I'm going to say seeing my son after being away at college for 3.5 months last year.
Okay, family, children. What else came to your mind?
Getting that first hug from my first grandchild who just turned a year old.
Grandchildren, wow, nice. This event, absolutely, good. And so I'm sure, so family, grandkids, this event, things you dreamed about, legacy that you are leaving behind. Actually, the word that came to my mind was nature. And actually, I lived here for about 3 years. That was more than 10 years ago. And I still remember that day where I was driving out of work in Marietta, driving up the hill. There was a beautiful sun coming through the trees. It was autumn. And I took the time to stop and to look at that. And for the first time, I really consciously actually saw and felt the beauty of nature. And that was a day that I remember really a lot. It was like it was yesterday because it really marked a change in my life. Actually, at that time, more than 10 years ago, I had gotten a promotion. I changed company. I moved to the US, so many changes with my family, with teenage kids at that time. And I was just incredibly busy. I was running from the morning to the evening, adjusting to change. I was quite stressed. And I was not totally fulfilled. I didn't know it at that moment, but I was not totally fulfilled. And up to that stage, actually, I had led bigger teams. I had important functions, but I always had the answers, actually. I was always in my comfort zone. Now, as a site director of a new manufacturing site that was building up, that was starting for worldwide supply, well, I wanted to get really good and have all the answers in HR, in finance, in engineering, about every single function. And I started to work more and get more stressed up and so on. And at one moment, I came to the conclusion that I couldn't continue as is, that it was just not possible that I had all the answers anymore. And I really had to change. And that really started the journey within myself and the journey to a more authentic leadership. It didn't happen in one day. It's a journey, actually. But what I want to describe to you is actually kind of a little bit the recipe and the ingredients I found to more authentic leadership. Actually, there are 4 ingredients in that recipe. The first ingredient was about caring, is about caring. And it's actually about starting to care about myself. That can sound very selfish, right? But 10 years ago, when I was here, I was leading a growing business. I was a mom of 2 teenage kids, a wife, a friend, a mother, and so on. And just always caring for others, but not leaving myself really space to care about myself. So the day I found out that actually caring about myself, knowing what gives me energy, would really help not only myself, but also the others around me, that was a really good starting point. It's not about the time you give to people, it's the quality of the time you give to others. So caring about myself was really an important step. The second ingredient is the ingredient of positivity. So I always thought about myself as a quiet, half-full person, being quite positive. And then one day I did read an article about an average person has about 70% of their thoughts that are negative. And I said, wow. And then I started looking at my own thoughts, and I said, wow, but mine are quite negative as well. How much time do I spend in the past to say, I haven't done that well, I could have done it better? How much time do I think projecting myself out about, oh, I may fail this and so on? So I became aware about that negative thing ongoing in my head. And actually, I now consciously try to do that effort to turn it in something positive. And I can tell you that the energy level actually totally changes when you place yourself in that positive space. With my jet lag, this night I did wake up like at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had a nightmare that I would come too late to my speech. And then I got started on my speech, and then I said, well, come on, I mean, tomorrow you're going to speak about positivity. And I switched my mind in the middle of the night to say, what if I think about that nature and those trees I saw 10 years ago? And I did fall asleep, actually. So it's actually quite magic how you can shift how you think, and you are what you think, right? Then, I mean, Dear Curtis already spoke about all of it. It's about the awareness of emotions. I don't know about 150 emotions yet, but I will buy that book to know about the 150 plus that do exist. But when I started finding out, when I was able to step back, actually, even in the heat of action, to say, I feel like this, or I feel like this, then I know I react very differently. Actually, throughout my busy days, often what I do from time to time is to actually sit down, take a breath, like what we did before. It takes 1 or 2 minutes. And then I take a notepad and I actually write down what my emotion is. And that really helps me acting from a different space. It helps me becoming aware, it helps me connecting to others, and it helps me taking care of profoundly who I am and my needs, actually. So awareness of emotion is like the third ingredient. And then the fourth one, which is the one, if that's a recipe of a cake, which would be like the baking powder to really elevate all the others, and that would be purpose. What you see behind me there is the photo of the Cathedral of Strasbourg. It's my hometown, Strasbourg, France, actually. And I find it's one of the most beautiful cathedrals. That cathedral was built over 300 years. So the people who put the first stone know what they wanted to do, but they never saw the end, but they had the faith in something bigger than themselves. And so thinking beyond what you have to do, but what you want to leave behind, that purpose, I think is just an incredible driver. And what I found out through that journey is that my purpose was all about people. And it was all about making the life of people better. So being in the business I'm in, I already had a really good foundation there, right? I've always worked on bringing to the market either life-saving products or vaccines. But in that journey, also increasingly, I saw that actually trying to make the life of the people who surround me better, and that as a leader, I think is a really important mission that we have. It was really my purpose, is actually bringing that positive energy and making sure the environment is shaped for others to be at their best. And so that's the purpose who actually carries me throughout my working days. So from there, actually, well, it gave me a lot of strength going through that journey. I like having those pictures of nature behind me to really feel stronger, like grounded, anchored like a tree, and solid as a mountain. And I like, in moments of stressful events, to keep those pictures in mind, just to keep me going in what is really important to me. And in that journey, actually, without knowing, I moved from that expert leadership about having all the answers, being full in my head, and I'm a scientist, so I was trained to have data and things in my head, to a more authentic leader where it's actually about head, heart, and guts, and to put the full me and myself being really, really important. It actually changed my days quite drastically because it gave myself more space to actually focus on what matters, on the essentials, on explaining the what and the why rather than the how. I'm now staying more out of the technical space and actually having more time with people and for people to build teams, to create a vision, to build culture. And I'm actually now perfectly fine not to have all the answers anymore. It's about asking the right questions, and it's about creating that environment of trust that was spoken to previously. And so now I like to actually apply what I learned for myself to the organization. And so it's more about becoming my role. I see it is about like building cathedral, right? Organizational architect. And as an organizational architect is then about developing leaders, building culture, creating high-performing teams, and providing the right tools for people to know themselves and to take care of themselves. And those can be quite simple things, but it needs actually time to focus on. Developing leaders, who of you have developed leadership visions in your businesses? And then do people live that vision? You could have very easy surveys actually populated with what makes that vision so that people and the leaders and yourself actually get feedback from your teams. How humbling is that to get feedback from your teams to actually continuously improve? It's about building a culture. If you want to build a culture of learning, of collaboration, you can have questions out there that you ask yourself and that others ask themselves, which builds a culture. Recently, I like to be strong and show that I can do things by myself sometimes. And I said lately, well, there is one question I will try to ask at the end of every day is, have I asked for advice? And so I'm now every day asking for advice. I'm getting super advice back, makes my life easier, but it also shapes a culture of collaboration and of learning. Then it's certainly about creating high-performing teams and with that basis of trust so that then you can have the right discussions, the healthy debates, which creates more commitment, more accountability, and driving more to results. That's actually known under the Lencioni model that probably some of you have heard. And then also to have trainings available in your organization for people to learn about their own well-being, right? About what is the physical needs, what are the mental needs, the emotional needs, and then that purpose part, that spiritual part. So really becoming more organizational architect. So to conclude, for me, that journey, that is an ongoing journey of focusing on what really matters and knowing that what matters comes from within is just an absolutely amazing journey. Now, at moments of big change or stress, I tend to fall back on my to-do list. So it's not like you have it forever, right? But once you know to ride a bicycle, you actually know how to get back on it. And so what I am doing is also in my days and weeks, building in rituals. I start my mornings with a 30-minute meditation every morning. I go for walks in the evening. And that also helps me caring about myself and staying true to myself and not letting my ego take over with the fears and worries and all the things that happen to us. So I invite you to that journey. If you master actually that focusing on what really matters, you can learn to actually stay calm in a busy environment. What is your purpose? Have you spent time thinking about that? What really matters to you from within? If you do that, really it changed my life, and I think it changed the life of people who surrounded me. And it is just an absolutely amazing, never-ending journey that you can decide to start. It's the journey of knowing what really matters from within.